Hi everyone, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Tuesday of Christmas week, and we've got Christmas and Hanukkah this weekend. It's all very exciting, and we are looking at a really somewhat confusing weather pattern. And I was thinking usually I try to wait a little later on to get the new weather model, and then I just kind of realized that every run keeps changing to some degree, especially in the longer term. So since there's no real pending doom of any kind, I figured, why not just use the one we have, which is the latest run from the overnight mid-cycle run. So let me just take you through what's going to happen here, or at least according to this particular model adventure. And one of the things that's going on is that we've got a couple of weak systems that are moving through. It's hard to pick one out, but there is one that's coming through on Thursday, and you've got the system off the coast, another one off the Pacific Northwest coast. You got one over there. You got all sorts of nonsense going on. So it's kind of a busy flow in some respects, but because you've got so many of these what we call short waves. When we have a long wave trough, this would be a better example of a long wave because it literally is a long wave. It maybe go from eastern Canada all the way down to Florida, whereas these short waves just have a limited, much more limited extent. But we've got so many of them running around. It's when they phase together that you oftentimes have big storms out of it. So we don't see that here, obviously. So now we move it along. And we go through Christmas weekend where this ridge off the southeast coast starts to build. There is a little bit of a short wave trough that moves through eastern Canada. I kind of think that the warm up is going to be relatively limited because of a few other things going on, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But this bridge builds off the southeast for early next week, and then as we start to get some action out in the west, one of the things that's happening is that there is going to be some kind of storm that heads up into the Dakotas and Minnesota, and then northeast from there. The trough is so far west and the ridge is so strong that I think by the time that system reaches the east coast, it's going to be nothing more than a simple cold front. And you can see most of the energy is up in here in eastern Canada. And then we have, a new trough that comes in to the west. Now, as we roll this along, the model does energize that trough into the Great Lakes and makes a major storm. This is for the end of next week. It's done it for several runs, but I can already see a couple of models starting to back off somewhat with pressures a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. And then here comes the next one. Now, as each one of these short waves goes by, it appears that the ridge gets dented a little bit, so it doesn't in the east, so it doesn't build back to the same extent. And then we have another one that comes through right after New Year's, and you can see it here. And then yet another one. Now, a couple of things are happening on this point, on this particular model run, is that you do have some ridging going on up over Greenland. I want to see what the long-term indices with regards to these, oscillations say. You don't have on this particular run, you have a little bit of a colder flow, but not much because of the fact that you've got this going on in the Gulf of Alaska, and you got this mess over here. So, you don't have the jet literally coming down, like that. I'm exaggerating there, but that would be something that would bring down more cold air. This has some cold air with it, but I'm going to tell you right now, and this is why, and I was saying this on my live Facebook weathercast yesterday, there's so much volatility in these models from run to run that, frankly, I don't know what's going to happen. Now, if you look at the European, okay, and this is the European at day 10. All right. Here's the GFS at day 10. Okay. And look at the difference with the European. And I'll switch it back. Okay. The European actually has a much, a colder look overall by day 10 because it has, a ridge here. I mean, it's not most ideal colder flow, but there is colder air getting funneled into the United States with this, and it has a trough here, but it also has a less deep weather system, and we'll show you on the surface how this mess played out. Honestly, this is just every run is going to take us on another journey, but let's go to the surface. and you'll see, there we go. So here's the GFS. We'll back it up. Let me just back it up and show you the first couple of systems. So here we are at the end of the week. This high builds in, but you've got a fairly deep, fairly potent system that comes into the west and brings the snows to California, Oregon, Washington, maybe even it looks like snow for Seattle out of this. And then into Utah and Arizona and Colorado. So there's a pretty good snow system for that area. Now, because of the ridge in the east that's building, there's a lot of warm air that gets pumped up into the upper Midwest, so they get rain. And the model has, a fairly deep low that goes west of Lake of Duluth. So, I mean, this is, confines the blizzard to the Dakotas and western Minnesota, and then it goes up into James Bay. So, and as far as we're concerned, it's really a simple matter of a cold front that doesn't even produce that much in the way of shower activity, and that all of Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day should be basically dry, and then that goes through. Then we go into later next week. We've got another system that comes into the west with some big snows. You can see it here in the darker blues, and snows for even to Washington and Oregon. It's usually not good when it snows in Seattle. It's usually not good for snow in the New York, New Jersey, northeast area. And then another storm comes out, heads over. This time it's a little further east, but just as deep. So another blizzard for parts of the upper Midwest, if that's even right. It's already, it's deep, but I'm telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if this winds up being less deep. And I want to show you what the European does with this in a second. And then we carry on, and here's another front with a shot of cold air, and somehow it winds up with this off the southeast coast and snows down to Biloxi by the end of the period. Even though while the air is cold, it isn't. I would consider it to be all that cold. And you know what? It's not even going to be real, because I bet you, I'll bet you anything it'll be gone on the next run anyhow. But I just think it's kind of silly that it does that. Now look at the European, because the European surface is different. Because of the fact that it has the trough the way it does, it has the first system going to the lakes, but it's already less deep than what it was yesterday, and less deep than, when I say deep, I mean intensity. It's weaker. Still a pretty decent system, but it's weaker as it moves into the western lakes. And then we have the next system that where the GFS has it up here over Lake Superior. This one has it in northeast Ohio, and it also has snows on day 10 for much of the Great Lakes, if this is right, because it does have a colder look to it overall. The bottom line is, I think what we're going to see, this is what I'm thinking. The pattern is transitory, in my view. We are changing into something else, and then over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be going through this process. Temperatures are going to average, going to be for where we are in the Northeast. They're going to be a little above average, maybe a little bit more than a little bit above average as you go further north. But overall, it's not going to be anything like last year where we had temperatures in the 70s on Christmas Eve. Okay. And after January 1st or 2nd, we're going to be into something else, and we'll see how that holds. I want to finish up today. We'll look at the temperature profiles of the upper atmosphere slightly above the surface. So you can see this is at 5,000 feet, which is going to pretty well reflect the surface. But I just want to show you. So here we are now, and we go above normal, then we go a little below normal, then we go a little above normal, then a little below. This is now at the end of the week. So I started it a little bit too early. So let's start from the beginning. My apologies. Okay, so we're starting below normal. We go a little bit above normal, then a little bit below normal, a little above, a little bit above into early next week, then kind of back and forth. And by the end of the period, one of the things that starts to happen is you can see the expansion of colder air in the western half of Canada again. So we'll see what that leads to down the road. And when we look at the GFS model, which is going to be a little different in terms of the details, but it also has that expansion of cold air in Western Canada, which it kind of splits the way, it evolves its long-term jet stream pattern. So who knows? Okay, so let's leave it at that. We're at a who knows period here in the weather pattern. I would just say to everybody, for you winter weather lovers in the East, I have no idea how this is going to turn out, and neither do you. I see people making these unequivocal, non-meteorological, emotionally based, hand-wringing statements because they somehow seem to think that they're entitled to snow from not every day from December 1st to April 1st. It just doesn't work that way. So far this December, I want to point out for New York, the New York, New Jersey area anyway, temperatures for the first 20 days of the month are averaging about a degree to as much as a degree and a half below normal. Okay, so we've had below normal temperatures. So far as through the month through date, we've had either near or above average snowfall. If you go north and northwest of Philadelphia and New York City, we have seen above average snowfall, and we've had 5 nickel and dime events since the right before Thanksgiving. This is totally different from last year. Okay, everything we're experiencing this year is completely different from last year, and I think those of you who are winter obsessed need to understand that. I don't know where this goes, and nobody does. I don't care what long range forecaster you follow. There's a much higher probability that they're going to be wrong. That's why I think the way I look at things is a lot better. It keeps you saner. We go through it as a process. Everything is a process. Sometimes those processes are quick. Sometimes they are long and grinding. And I think right now we are going to be going into one that's kind of in between. Because, if we get a big storm that goes up into the lakes, that could be enough to a catalyst to trigger off some kind of pattern change. We'll see. All right, so everybody have a great day. Go finish your shopping because the weather is dry. We're going to start a warm up over the next couple of days. No big storms in sight. You'll have no weather travel related problems in the eastern part of the United States, at least. So no matter where you're going, it's going to be a little more problematic in the West, where a lot of the West is going to have a white Christmas. Yippee, yippee. And we will see you. We'll keep cutting our tapes. I may slow down a little bit as we go into the Christmas holiday weekend just to take a break if there's no impending big storms. SS Storm Chasers, meteorologist joechaffee.com. Download my weather app, free download. Subscribe to my forecast if you'd like for the New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Hudson Valley, and Eastern Pennsylvania. Just $1 a month for a lovely advertiser-free experience.